Hi, this is Greg Harmon with Greg's Blow & Smoke Barbecue in Topeka, Kansas. I am going to show you how to trim a brisket today and how to prepare it for cooking, and then we're going to let it cook and show you that whole process. I've had several friends ask me how to do it, so I thought it'd probably just be easier to show the video on how to do it. So see if we can get through this here. This is a Packer brisket. It's about a 16-pound brisket. I got it from Sam's. It's choice. It's going to be fine for what we're doing. It's not a competition. We're going to slice it up, make it nice. So this is fat side up, and that's fat side down. So when you start having these conversations, fat side down is right here. I always start, not real sure why, but always start with the fat side up. This is the area you want to take off. All this fat, and you can see right here how thick this fat is. And we're talking inch and a half thick of fat in certain places on this. Okay. Contrary to popular belief, I believe that fat is a good thing. Fat tastes good, it gives flavor and moisture to the meat, and so I like fat, but this is way too much fat. There are people that are artists at this, and I am not one of those. I am not an artist at this. I will not have great smooth cuts, but I usually just start right here and start trying to work my way through all of this fat. Try to leave a little bit on the top. Like, you don't want to get into the meat too much as you go. I got into the meat a little bit there already, but that's not too bad. You want to save as much meat as you can, but you want to get rid of all of this excess fat. I heard it said once, if you can leave 1/8 of an inch of fat around the top of the brisket, that's great, and I believe that's true. But the more fat you have, the chewier it is. The other thing is, a lot of people will, when they're done cooking, they'll go ahead and cook it just like this, and when they're done, they will then cut the fat off. And I've done that, and it does cut off easier after it's cooked, but I like to rub both sides of the brisket, and so if you do that, you're gonna lose the ability to rub it. It'll all run off. So I go ahead and cut the fat off, and again, if you leave a little bit, it's not an issue at all. You just want to get, especially the hard fat off. Some of that is really hard. Like this is fine here. And on this side, I'm going to turn around so you can see it a little bit better. On this side, you get into a thinner amount of fat, but that gets real hard to eat. So you want to get through that and get that peeled off as you go here. So I just pull and kind of make slices as I go. It gets thicker at the bottom. Obviously, you just want to stay out of the meat if you can. You want to just keep on top there. That was a pretty good cut. Got a lot of that out of there. Working through, and on the side here, again, that fat's not good fat. You want to get all of that off if you can. It's real stringy and tough to eat. So, and it doesn't dissolve like the other fat does. Got into the meat a little bit, not bad. Like I said, there are people that are artists at that. I am not one of these. And you can be really anal on these if you want. I mean, there are people that will spend an hour trimming a brisket and getting it right. I'm not that worried about it. Like I said, I like a little fat. If I get a little too much, it's fine. Just want to keep down just a little bit is wonderful for flavor. Once you get the top done, you can see there's a thick spot right here. Right in here is a real thick spot. Right here. That's the hard part you want to try to get out. When you're getting into trimming a brisket, this line right here is how you separate the point from the flat. Up here on top is the point. It's a real fatty part of meat. And then underneath on the bottom, the long thin part is called the flat. And the flat is where a lot of people really like their slices from, because it's thin. It's a thin, more, I guess, pretty looking cut of meat, but it doesn't have a lot of fat in it, not near as much as the point. And so, like Rudy's barbecue, that you get an option. When you get slices of brisket there, do you want lean or do you want moist? If you say lean, they're going to take their slices from the front of the brisket, from the flat right here. And if you want moist, they're going to take your slices from here. again, I said I like flat, I like moisture, so I always get the top part, I always get the point, or I say, you know, the moist part. And really that's probably pretty good right here. On the front, probably a little thick. I try to keep a little bit on there if I can, because it adds flavor. There's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people cook without any at all. It was pretty thick right there. Got it out of the way. Cut this piece off right here. Okay. So then I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm really gonna work on these areas. Both sides of the brisket have these areas. This real thick area right here, and you can almost just peel it off as you peel it back. We're gonna get rid of that. That's hard fat. If you get to where you want to separate the point from the flat, and some people do, especially if you're making like a pan of burnt ends, as I usually cut towards me on this, but for the video purposes, as you start to cut this piece away, you can see that this piece of fat right here goes all the way in. You're not ever going to be able to get it all out of there, but you can get in there more like this. Just keep digging at it, and see it's all just fat. But what that is, that's your line between your point and your flat. A lot of times I'll cook it this way for a while, but when I get up to about 160 degrees, I'll go ahead and separate the point and the flat, and then I'll turn the point, which is now on the bottom, into burnt ends. I'll make a pan of burnt ends. So this line right here, I'm gonna run around to this way, there's a line of fat right there. As you cut through here, it comes down just like that, and that's how you separate it. And I don't know if you can see my fingers working there, but that's the line you want to cut to separate. All of this right here is your flat, and then on the other side, what's left is your point. So then, turning it around, the same thing we just did on the other side. We're going to start peeling this back. Same thing, just on this side. This is your fat line between your point and your flat. You can see it goes in there, and this is where people can be really anal if they want. Dig all this out. I kind of like to leave a little bit of it, just because again it adds flavor. And the point, you expect that to be a fattier part anyway. So it's real easy now. You can see the line a lot easier after trimming both sides. Cut across here, cut all the way down through here. On this side, it's going to come out right up in here. That's your point right here. That's your point. And when I make burnt ends, I try to cook it as a whole brisket to start with, and then like I said, I cut that point off and I cut them into small cubes and put in a pan. And I add a little brown sugar and some seasoning to it. Today we're not making burnt ends, we're just gonna do a regular brisket. So to me, and there are people, like I said, you can spend hours trying to get all this off, make it all pretty. I like a little fat, I don't like a lot of fat. So I will continue to work on this as I go, just because you wanna get the hard pieces off. That was a pretty hard piece right there. Not a big deal. It's not pretty, but a lot of this will cook off and melt away, remember. Okay, so I'm a fat side down guy. When I cook fat side down. There's a big debate on it. My thing is, I don't think fat actually from the top soaks through the muscle into it. I think it just runs off. So I'm a fat side down guy. And I always, like I said before, I go ahead and I rub the bottom and the top of the brisket. So I do a mustard base. I'm gonna cover it in mustard. And why do I do this? Because it's an adhesive that holds the rub in place. It's not, by the way, you will never taste the mustard. I have people in my family that do not like mustard, and they have no idea that there's any mustard on here. It's all it is a binder. There are people that will use olive oil, and there are people that use mayonnaise. There's different things that you can use as a binder. I just use mustard. And then I have my own Greg's Bull and Smoke Barbecue rub, and I rub this side. I'm not as worried about this side, wrong side. I'm not as worried about this side as I am the other side, because this is the side that's going down. A lot of this, I'm probably going to lose a little bit of this anyway because of the fat, but I want to get a good coat of rub on here. I want to get a good coat because this rub adds flavor, and this is your bark. By putting it on the bottom and the top, I'm going to get a good bark on both sides. I'm going to pat it in. Ooh, there we go. I'm going to pat it in. I'm going to pat it in. Remember, this is not the side I'm as worried about because this is all, that fat under there is going to run off a lot of it. But that bark will still be there. Turn it over. Same thing up here. I like to get down in here. The more places you can get your rub, the better places you're going to have bark and flavor to add to. There are people that put on an inch thick worth of rub. I like my rub. I think it's great. It's one of the best I've ever had, but I do like the flavor of the meat. So I think the purpose of the bark and the rub is to add to the flavor, not be the flavor. So I like the flavor of brisket. So I would be fine probably with it just being like a steak and no rub on it at all. So this is how I do this. So I rub it. I'm gonna pat it again when I'm done here, and then I'm gonna do something a little different at the end. I'm gonna mix up a herbal rub, not a rub, just a little sprinkle of herb, and sprinkle over the top of it, and I'll show you that here in just a little bit. Okay, so I mixed up my herbal rub here, and I learned this actually from cooking prime rib. And having this herbal rub on here just gives it an extra little kick that, I can't explain it. It's a little spicier. It just gives it a nice little flavor. It's really good. So I use rosemary, I use oregano, I use thyme, and then I've discovered this, it's Tone's rosemary garlic, and it's got a really good flavor to it. And I know we've already got rosemary in there, but it adds that garlic to it too. And you can see here I've mixed it up. I did 1 teaspoon of each is what I did. And now all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sprinkle this over the top. I don't want this to be the flavor, I just want it to be added to it. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna sprinkle this over the top. All the way over it, like this. It's gonna be kind of pretty at the end. And this is something I don't see a lot of people do with their briskets. And I've started doing here recently, and I've been really happy, and the people that I've sold brisket to have been happy with this addition. It kind of makes it stand out a little bit more. So I highly recommend it. You do whatever herbs you want. These are just the ones that I use. And try to be somewhat consistent. Not, like I said, it's not rocket science. Barbecue is not rocket science. It's easy. You just got to have the time to do it and find out what you like. A little bit more over here. And you can see, again, one more time, the flat is right here coming up the top. And then that point down there is, since I've got it upside down now, the fat down, the point's now on the bottom. But you can see this is the fattier part of it down here, and this is your flat. When you go to the store and you buy just a flat, that part right there is what you're buying, and it's really good for slices. Okay, so we're gonna get the grill fired up. We're gonna put this on the smoker. I'll check back in here in just a minute when I get the grill going. Okay, so I just got the briskets on the smoker. I'm gonna go ahead and cook a few more while I'm at it, using the Traeger Pro 34, powered by the Savannah Stoker over here. Just put it on, and I'm really gonna let them cook all night. I'm gonna set it at 165 degrees on this. If you have the regular dial, it'd be just the 65. So this is what they look like. It's just now firing up, as you can see. So they're just kind of tucked in for the night. What I'm gonna aim for is about 160 degree internal temperature. So I'm just gonna let them cook all night, and I'll check them in the middle of the night, and we'll see you in the morning. Okay, so it's been 10 hours on 170 degrees, and everything's looking really good. Briskets are right at 160 degrees in here. One of them got done just a little early, a couple hours ago, so I went ahead and wrapped it, but this is the one that we were starting with. You can see it's right at 160 to 65 degrees, depending on where in the point I'm measuring it at.
That's perfect. That looks good. That middle one, it's right at about 158, I think is what I saw a little bit ago, 56. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap both of those. But how I'm gonna wrap them is I do things a little different. I'm just gonna, it's a little warm, so I'm gonna quickly get this on my tin foil here. And a lot of people use butcher block or butcher paper, that peach butcher paper, and I've used that before too, and I really like it. But to me, it's just a ton of effort because I have to use the string to tie it all together. And with the tin foil, I don't have to, it's not quite the work on that or the mess, it seems like. Some people don't even wrap at all because they like to get that good bark, and I do too. So one of the things that I do, I like the juice in the brisket. That's why I wrap it. Okay, so I go ahead and wrap it full like this, and then I set it on the smoker, and then I actually open it back up like this, so that I'm catching the juice underneath, but I'm still working on getting that bark that's on there. So that's how I wrap my briskets to get maximum juice, because I can't stand dry brisket at all. I want to keep that juice, but also because I leave it open like that because I want to get a good bark too. So that's how I do it. Me wrapping briskets, it's 10 hours now. So what I want to do, and I'm using my Tap-A-Q wireless smoker, and I can check it anywhere on my phone. And then what I do is I'll wait till that gets to 195 degrees internal temperature in the point where I'm measuring it there, you can see. And at 195 degrees, I'll take it off. I'll let it rest just for a little bit, and I'll go ahead and slice it. And so I'll be back when this gets to 195 degrees. All right, so our brisket is done. Was right at 13 hours is what it was from start to finish. I did bump it up to 215 degrees to finish it because it was time. I was tired of waiting. So some things about the brisket as it sits here. This is the packer that we talked about yesterday. If you look right here on the very tip of this is the front of the flat. When people talk about burn ends, naturally this is the burn end right here. This is one. And back here on the back, at the back of the point, all of these are what would be traditionally burn ends. People like myself make artificial burn ends by separating the point and the flat and cutting them into squares, all this. But your original burn ends are the pieces on the corners where it got a little more charred because it got a little more done there. Anyhow, so if you look at this, I don't know if you can see it, but the grain, you can see the grain goes this way. And on a flat, the grain always goes the same direction. In the point, it goes all different directions. So when you do your slices, you want to go against the grain. I can see where the grain is, so I want to cut just like this. I want to cut across the grain. I always start by cutting off the burn end first, and then cut my little pieces. And I'm going to have to go a little thicker with my slices so that it doesn't fall apart, because I want to have good slices with this. But you can see the smoke ring there. It's looking pretty good. I am going to go ahead and separate the point and the flat because I want to do my slices a little different with my point. So back in here, remember yesterday when I started this, we talked about this little piece right in here where we cut that apart. If you take that ring, you can see a line that goes right over this, over to the other side. That's the line for your point. So you're just going to put your knife in there, and it's like butter. It just goes real easy all the way down to the edge. And you have now very easily separated your point and the flat. And you can see the grains in here. The grains at the front go this way, and then they go this way, and then up here they go this way again. So I like to separate them when I do slices. For that purpose, I put my slices in the pan, you get them in there as I go. And then I just get back to slicing like I did before. I always slice the flat first, and then I work on the point. Now, because I make sandwiches with these when I do events, a lot of times I'll cut this straight down this side because I don't want my slices to be bigger than maybe 3 inches long. So a lot of times I'll just do this right here.
because it's too big for buns at that point. Okay, and then that's the inside. You can see the inside of it here. See all the juice coming out of there. Plenty moist. It's looking good. But again, when I get back to this, I'm coming back to cutting across the grain. Cutting across the grain. And you can see how well that's working. The smoke ring is very good. That amount of time on a smoker will do that for you. So that's how you do that. When I cut the point across, it's going to be very difficult to cut across the grain all the time, so I really don't worry about it that much. A lot of times I just cut it in half like this, and then I just do my slices like this. And when I put them in the pan, I put them upside down so people don't see them, that it's the bottom there. But again, this is your more moist section. You can see the difference. A slice from the fat or the flat versus a slice from the point. The marbling and stuff in there is a much more moist on the point. So that's how I cut my brisket. That's how I slice it. Makes great sandwiches that way. Makes great slices. Nothing better than that right there. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or email me. We'll put my business information at the bottom so you can have my email address. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.